Hi, everyone. Welcome to our first online session for the Foundations of Statistics course using R. It's great to see 22 people here, so welcome. This session is being recorded, and I want to make sure that we all can hear each other and see each other if possible. So I want to just go over a few things about using the GoToTraining environment. So first off, I'm bringing up a slide that says, hey, can you hear me? So I want to make sure that we can hear each other and, if possible, see each other in this space. So I just ask that at all times that you have your microphone muted. And here I have a little icon and an arrow pointing to the microphone icon that's red. So yours should be red as well. I have control, so I've muted everybody so far. But if I unmute you, you'll have the ability then to go ahead and mute yourself. So I'm going to go ahead and look at the attendees here, and then I'm going to allow you all to have access to your microphone and speak at your will. But you'll notice that we'll get a lot of feedback now. So please go ahead and mute yourself in the way that I just explained. Great. Perfect. Okay, so anytime you want to talk, just make sure that you unmute yourself. So that was exercise number one. Next, I just like everybody just quickly to, if you can hear me in the text chat, hear me, just type yes in the text chat. I'd really appreciate that. So that's just going to the chat here and then just saying yes. Okay, thank you, Cynthia. Yogesh, thank you. Jayanta, thank you. David. Okay, so if you can't, so I'm going to type something in the text chat. If you can't hear me, send me a private message. Okay, but I'm hoping at this point that everybody can hear me. This technology is pretty stable. I've been using it for a while and teaching these types of courses and sessions, so I feel pretty good about that, knock on wood. Okay, so next up, I just want to go to the next slide here. Okay, thank you, Robert, for your message. Okay, so as we go through this class, please at any point, if you have questions, just type them in the text chat. This will help me know what's going on in your mind. If you have something that's a concern or a question or maybe an alternative way to solve a problem, share it. And if you don't want to share it publicly, feel free just to send it to me privately in the text chat. And you can choose to send your message to the entire audience or a particular person. And so this is the equivalent of like passing notes in class. Okay, so you could even chat with your classmates, and I encourage it. So I encourage you to use the medium as you see fit. What's going to be most helpful to you? Great. Next up, just if you want to enable your camera, please feel free. Just make sure that your lighting is adequate. So if you're going to bother using your camera, make sure that we can actually see you. And also make sure that your camera position is so you're like centered and that you're comfortable with what your position and what's in your background, and you're comfortable with what you're wearing and what will be shown. This goes without saying, but I always like to remind people of that. So feel free at this point, if you want to enable your camera, you can. And there's a little camera icon right below the microphone, and so you can enable that if you want. Okay, I don't see anybody doing that, but if you want to, please feel free to enable your camera. It's always nice to put a face with a name. You could also wait until we kind of go around the room. We're going to do a virtual go around the room and introduce each other, so it'd be nice to have that as well, your image if possible. So again, if you do have a webcam, please, and you want to share, not required, but it'd be great to enable it. So, alrighty. Next up, okay, so if you're in a browser version, if you're not seeing a camera, it might not be enabled for the browser version. That's fine. And in terms of audio, just there's a few ways that you can speak up in class here. So just make sure that you always have your phone muted if you dialed in, and your microphone muted if you're using voice over IP. So let's get down to what we're going to be talking about today. So the point of these online sessions is to really learn a few things. One is for me to learn more about you and your experience, your prior knowledge of coding, of R, and then I want to make sure, I'm very diligent about this, that you're successfully learning R at a basic level. So if you're coming in brand new, great. The course is meant to make everyone successful at learning R at a basic level. If you're coming in as an intermediate R user, this should be a helpful refresher, and you'll be able to really hit the ground running when you get to your data mining classes and also the statistics portion of this class. So it's ensure that we have a solid baseline to move everybody in the program forward with understanding coding in both R and Python, really a popular languages and platforms for doing business analytics. Okay, so first things first, I mentioned I want to learn a little bit more about you. So during this session, I'm just going to ask you to take maybe 4 minutes right now. You'll see that I posted this URL in the text chat. Go ahead and please complete this survey. This will also count for your attendance in this session. So I'm just going to set a timer for like 3 minutes. I'll just ask you to respond to this survey in 3 minutes or so. It shouldn't take you much longer than that. Oh. And if you're, just make sure you mute your mic if it happens to be on. I hear a few people. And just a reminder, if you are dialing in, make sure that you mute yourself using the microphone icon. It shouldn't be green on your screen right now. It should be muted. So if you have a little green microphone icon, I see a few people do. I might just mention your name. So Jayanta, I think everybody else is fine. Thanks. Okay, looks like time is up. So if you don't mind, please go ahead and finish up your responses. It looks like I got 22 responses, so I'm going to end the timer now. And what I like to do actually is show you the responses of the survey. So since we're in a business analytics program and data is king or queen, what I like to do in my own teaching is actually learn much more about my students and then try to tailor things kind of accordingly. And so I'd like to share back with the class as a collective. And I know we're only a subset of the class, we're kind of a third of it. 22 or so students here, but you notice that the people that have attended, not everybody has completed, self-reported in terms of completing session 1 or session 2. So if you fit within any of these, you can kind of see how you fare according to your peers. And 7 people here haven't completed any. So which is totally fine. Want to make sure that before you attend the next online session, that you've gone through at least the first 2. That's going to be really important. So the concepts and the things that we talk about that become a little bit more advanced make sense. Also good to see that, how many people have actually completed. So some people have already completed the first exercise, which is the first required exercise 1.2, 17 of you. And you'll notice that it's exercise 3 through 6. Obviously, there's no expectation that you've completed them yet, but one person is getting through this rather quickly, which is awesome. The other thing I like to show you is how many of you have prior knowledge of programming. So you'll see that about a third or a little over a third of the class is new to coding. And I like to share that with you. This is your data, but just so you see the representation of you and your peers within the class, whatever category you may fit in. We have some people, another third, that consider themselves more novices with coding but have taken classes. We have 18% or 4 people that they know enough to be dangerous. Watch out. And we have 1 person a coder by profession and 1 person that characterized him or herself as an intermediate coder, very proficient. So just so you know kind of where I know kind of where we sit. In terms of experience with R, so like a little less than half. This is your first introduction to R, so I'm kind of curious what you think about it, especially if you've had some coding experience before. It might be a little bit different. So just like to hear a little bit about that. No one's characterizing themselves as an expert. Well, I need a TA, so that would be helpful. Just kidding. We don't even have any frequent users. So here we're looking at like some people that are somewhat familiar but have never used it. And some people have used it a few times, a little over 13%. So I hope this is kind of a helpful lens. And let's look at what people already know. Now, this is Google Forms, so this isn't the best representation of this data, but I will mouse over so you can see. So we're looking at some people that have some experience with Python, 6 people with Java, some people with C or C++, 1 person with JavaScript. SQL seems a little bit higher. Actually, as part of the lessons in the book that I put together for you guys, I have a lesson on SQL, so you might find that kind of cool to do that in R. That's chapter 7, which is not required, but it's there for you. I'll show it to you in a little bit later. If you have questions, feel free to chat with me. Some people have no basic. None was an option, and you can just see some other ones that were put in the other category, like Scala, Visual Basic, HTML, and these other responses here. So thank you so much for your candor and your diligence in filling this out. Now I'd like to move on to our next topic. So what I do now, I'm just going to go back to my PowerPoint and bring that up for you. Okay. That should be coming up momentarily. Good. All right, so I thought I'd share just a tiny bit about me. I mean, as I think I'm probably one of the first professors that you're meeting as part of the business analytics program. So it's kind of my job to like officially welcome you. I've looked at the roster of incoming students, this class of 2019. I'm super psyched and honored to be your professor, not only for this course, but also about a course that you'll be taking at NYU Shanghai called data visualization. So since somebody just joined right now, so Rashad, if you could mute yourself, that would be great. So you'll notice here, I just put a little promo, but I have a book coming out on data visualization where that you'll be reading as part of the course that you take with me in Shanghai. And I hope you find it, super valuable. Actually, some MSBA graduates actually contributed cases to the book, which is pretty cool. So it's very data oriented, and it's about really using visualization to explore your data, but also to tell stories with it. And you'll hear a lot more about that later. Feel free to connect with me on Twitter. I'm on Twitter all the time, or LinkedIn. I have a fairly unique name, so you should be able to find me. But some professors aren't so keen on it. But please feel free. You can use those channels to communicate with me. I actually think it's kind of fun and to share. I share, things that I'm working on, kind of with the world. So if you want to be part of that, feel free to follow me. All right. Just a few other things about me. I've been at Stern since 2011, so going on 18 years. I'm sorry, 8 years, and I've been at NYU for quite a bit longer than that. I actually did my undergrad at Stern and then went to Columbia to do my graduate work and my doctorate. And one of the first courses that I ever taught while I was at Columbia as a doctoral student was computer programming. So it's really like a subject that's really dear to me, and I really enjoy teaching it as well as being a coder myself. The work I do is in two distinct fields, one in being in information systems and specifically data visualization. And a lot of the work that you need to do with data and visualization happens in environments like R and Python, especially when you're using specific types of data displays. It's important to have some background in coding in order to kind of implement those. And another area that is dear to me is the area of learning science, which is it's really the study about how learners learn and how you design environments to know exactly if they're learning and how they're actually achieving that and what those outcomes are. And that area of learning science is really overlaps a lot with data science and even business analytics to a point, but instead of business analytics, we can kind of call them education analytics. And so that's an area of mine, and I'm the director of this lab that we have at Stern that you should definitely stop by if you're around, called the WR Berkeley Innovation Labs. And so I'm the director of the learning science team there, where we create robust digital learning environments and kind of measure their success and implement them for actually Stern students, and online courses and other things are in our portfolio. So that's a big part of my role at Stern, in addition to being an information systems faculty. So totally enough about me. We will have time to talk more if at all you're interested. I do a lot of capstone advising when you start hearing about your capstones, and just so you have a sense of my background. I work also with lots of other companies. I've done a lot of social media consulting and have brought real businesses into the classroom, which is kind of my forte, and an area of what we call kind of authentic learning at Stern, or experiential learning. So we're always working with different companies and businesses in my courses, so students can apply their skills for a real reason, not necessarily an academic exercise. So these are just some examples. So at this point, what I'd really like to do is, we've learned a little bit about you from the survey, but one of the goals here is to make sure you have your mic working and that we get to learn a little bit about you and where you're kind of calling in from, per se. So we'll do this like radio station style. I'm going to go around the virtual room, and I have a list of attendees, so that's you, who've signed up. And I'm just going to say, I'll probably start with Aaron Smith because he seems to be the first person on my list. And I'll say, Aaron, hey, can you introduce yourself? And just give me like 10 seconds, not too much longer, because I want to make sure everybody gets a chance to introduce themselves. And if you have your camera, if you can enable it, that would be cool too. So the steps are, I call on you, you unmute yourself, tell me a little bit about yourself, name, location, job title, and then we'll kind of go around our virtual room. Okay? Any questions, you can type them in the text chat. So we'll start with Aaron. Aaron, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. Hi. My camera, I don't have a camera icon, so I can't turn my camera on, but okay. I am calling from Boston, and I'm a researcher and analyst at Google, and I'm still at the office at 9 p.m. taking this class.
Wow, good for you. Welcome. Well, thanks for joining us so late. Okay, next we have Cynthia. Cynthia, are you with us?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Hey.
Hi. So I'm calling in from Long Island, New York, and I am a clinical documentation specialist RN at a community hospital out here.
Well, welcome.
And I also don't have the camera icon either. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay, that's okay. Well, welcome, Cynthia. I would love to learn more about that role. That seems super interesting.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have Yogesh. Yogesh, I see that you're on. I don't know if you can hear us. Maybe you can type something in the text chat if you're not able to talk. I'll give you another second, and then we'll come back to you. Okay, you can't unmute, so I'm going to try to unmute you. It looks like I'm sending you an unmute request, but it doesn't look like. Maybe Yogesh, you can just introduce yourself in the text chat, and then we'll come back and read it together.
I think it worked.
Oh, perfect.
Sorry.
Hey.
All right, it has. My name is Yogesh, and I'm here in Philadelphia, and my job title is product manager. I work at a company called Energy Services Group out of Boston.
Oh, great. Well, welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Next, we have Jayanta.
Hello, Christine, and hello. Good evening to everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
Okay. So same issue with the camera. Cannot turn it off, and I am calling from Rochester, New York, right now. Although I stay in Woodbridge, New Jersey, and I work as a big data solution architect with a data and analytics consulting company known as Knowledgeant. My current client is Excel's Blue Shield, where I'm building a big data setup, enterprise data hub for them.
Great, great. I'm originally from Middlesex County, New Jersey, which is where Woodbridge is. So that's very cool.
Okay. Yeah.
Great. So next we have Ali. Ali.
Hello, everyone. This is Ali. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Welcome.
Hi. So I'm here in St. John's, Newfoundland. I'm an operations manager of Schlumberger, which is an oil and gas service company. And that's it.
Wow. What time is it there?
It's 10:30. It's actually kind of odd because our time zone is offset by like half hours from our closest time zones. So, yeah.
Well, welcome. Thanks for joining us so late. Next, we have David. Devitt.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Welcome.
Hi, I'm in Manhattan, and I work for DHL, and I'm head of sales operations for the Americas. Actually, my job location is actually in Newark, New Jersey, but I live in the city.
Oh, wow. Do you work in Panama?
Not in Panama, but I've been in a lot of other locations around the world. That is one of our big hubs for just ships going through, obviously.
Obviously, yeah. I do a lot of work in Panama, so I was curious. Oh, thanks, David. Nice to meet you.
Thank you.
Carlos is next. Carlos Gonzalez.
Yes, hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Welcome.
Great. So, hi, this is Carlos from Boston. I'm a banking specialist for McKinsey & Company. It's a management consulting firm.
Wonderful, Carlos. Welcome. Do you know Aaron? Also from Boston?
No, not yet.
All righty. Well, welcome. Next, I have Stanley Fu. Just checking.
Hi, can you hear me?
Sure. Yep. Welcome.
Hi, this is Stanley calling from Hong Kong, and it's almost 9 o'clock here, and I took half a day off to attend this class. I'm the Asia Pacific GM for a company called Venturely Co., and we specialize in e-commerce optimization and go-to-market strategies.
Great. Well, welcome. And it's 9 a.m., right? Not p.m.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep. All right. Well, good morning. I'm in Manhattan, so. Okay, so next we have Rashad.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, everyone. Rashad Hawk, grew up in New York. I currently work as a New York program manager at New York Life Insurance.
Okay, and you're located in New York?
Yeah, I'm in Queens. Well, not exactly born, but raised in Queens, but I was born in Bangladesh.
Oh, great. Well, welcome, Rashad. Next, we have Christopher Castro. So, Christopher, I see your mic's on, just can't hear you. All right, we'll give you a second. Maybe I'll move on to Tong while you figure out your audio. Let me know if there's anything I can help. Yeah, your mic is green, and it says that you're good to go audio-wise on my end. Okay, maybe just test it out again, Christopher, and then I'll come back to you. Okay, Tong, are you here?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can. Welcome.
Hey, yeah, this is Tong Dai, and right now I'm taking a short vacation and calling from Shanghai, but I'm currently working in New York City as a data analyst. I work for this startup called Basecap, former employee technology analyst from McKinsey.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Well, welcome.
Thank you.
Next, we have Emmanuel. I see that you're on the line, Emmanuel. Just want to. I'll send you an unmute request. And Chris, just ping Christopher Castro. Just ping me when you if you get your audio working, and we'll come back to you. Okay, Emmanuel, I don't know if you can hear me, but send me a text chat. Let me know if you're working on your audio. Okay, next we have Abby Hidjit. I'm sorry with the pronunciation. I don't know if you're on the line.
Yeah, that's fine. Hope everyone can hear me.
Yes, we can.
And my name is Abhijit. Yes, so I'm a senior software engineer. I recently joined here from Bank of America. I moved here. This is a Provenir, a small analytics company, and I basically manage the software and data analytics platform here. I live in Secaucus, New Jersey.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. It's a lot of people from, living in New Jersey. That's that's where I was originally born. So, great. Well, welcome. Next we have Par.
Hi, can you hear me?
And a little bit of feedback.
Oh, sorry. I don't know what's going on here. Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Hi, I'm calling from Milford, Connecticut. I work in Manhattan as a senior analyst in an ad agency called Emery & McCann, which is a child company of IPG, Interpublic Group. So in my day-to-day work, I do campaign analysis for various clients. So my most recent clients come from the financial industry. One is from the government agency or semi-government agency, and then the other is from nonprofit.
Great. And remind us where you're calling from?
Calling from Milford, Connecticut.
Connecticut. Great, great. Well, welcome.
Thank you.
Next, we have Jessica.
Hi, my name is Jessica Angier. I'm from Shelton, Connecticut.
Welcome.
I am the co-founder and strategic customer partner for Hybrid Intelligence. It's a data analytics and reporting company that specializes in the consumer packaged goods industry.
Wow, it sounds super interesting. Well, welcome, Jessica. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Shivika.
Hi, everyone. I'm Shivika Mehta, calling in from...
Getting a little bit of feedback.
Yeah. So I'm calling from Jersey City. And I think the next time I'll join the session, I'll be calling in from Long Island City. But yeah, I'm working with Citibank, and I am the vice president in the risk management team for US branded cards.
Oh, wonderful.
Wonderful.
I'm just working on the feedback here. Okay. For those people that are testing out your audio, that's totally okay. It's just sometimes just make sure you mute yourself if you remember. Thank you, Shafika. Next, we have Jared Lee.
Hi, Jared Lee. I'm here in Manhattan. I work for Consolidated Edison, a utilities company in New York City. I'm a senior analyst in their cost management group supporting the steam commodity.
Wow, sounds interesting. Thank you, Jared. Welcome. Next, we have David Huang.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
We can.
Hi, this is David Huang, calling from right outside of Philadelphia. I work for Vanguard, which is a investment management company. My role is in the product strategy division.
Wonderful, David. Thank you. Nice to meet you. We're going to return back to Christopher. Christopher, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Chris Castro. I'm calling from Jersey City. I work for CIBC, it's a Canadian bank, and I am a director of electronic foreign exchange trading.
Wonderful. Well, really nice to meet you. Thank you.
Thanks.
Let's move on to Molly. Looking to see if Molly is here. All right, I do not see a Molly. Next, we have Omar.
Hey, evening, everyone. I'm Omar, based in Jersey City as well. I work in the city for JP Morgan in the operational risk analytics team.
Great. Well, nice to meet you. Lots of people in Jersey, lots of people in Jersey City. Very interesting. Some people in Connecticut. Great, great. Next, we have Robert.
Hi there, can you hear me?
We can, thank you. Welcome.
All right, I'll give you a chance if you wanna try and get the video working. I do have a little video cam icon.
Oh
Happy to
yeah,
act.
please.
So let's go. Is it gonna let me share? Unclear. I think I have to ask you to do that, it says.
Okay, so Robert, allow sharing webcam.
There we go. It's coming up now.
It is.
Hi there.
Hi.
Hi everyone. Yeah, sorry, casual, but wearing my Jayhawks shirt. I'm celebrating my team's win over the weekend, so very happy about that. Robert Ader, I'm up here in Westchester County. I do work in the city. I work as a manager for PricewaterhouseCoopers in their advisory practice, specifically in their technology strategy practice. Focus across a variety of industries, but mostly focusing on either retail and consumer goods or transportation and logistics companies. Also an NYU alum.
Awesome. Well, welcome, Robert, and thanks for sharing your webcam. That's great. Next up, we have Risa. Risa, I don't know if you can hear me. I see that your mic is on. Just send me a text chat if you can't hear me. If you need help, just let me know. And then I'll move on, and then I'll just circle back to you, Risa. And then we have Lakshmi.
Hey, this is Lakshmi calling from Hoboken. Can you guys hear me?
We can. Welcome.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. So I'm calling from Hoboken, and I work in Manhattan for Aetna, and I'm into population health analytics. A software engineer and primarily into programming, Java programming. That's it. Thanks.
Great. Nice to meet you. Thank you. Just going to circle back to Molly, just to see if you're on the line. I don't see a Molly. And then finally back to Risa. All right. Do you want to go ahead and give it a go, Risa?
Hey everyone, can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you. Welcome.
Hi Kristen, hey everyone. My name's Raisa, I'm calling in from Manhattan. I'm originally from Bosnia. Up until a few months ago, I was at a hedge fund as the treasurer and head of counterparty risk, but I am now in an alternative data startup as a product specialist. My company is called Earnest Research, and we're doing some really fun stuff.
Well, eager to hear more. Well, welcome.
Thanks.
Okay. And now I'd like to circle back to Emmanuel.
Can you hear me?
We can. Welcome.
Okay, welcome. My name is Emmanuel Hippolyte. I am the manager of business and project controls for Pacific Gas and Electric Company. So another utility, sister utility of Con Edison. So welcome.
Oh, well, welcome. Thank you. And remind us where you're calling from?
San Francisco.
San Francisco. Oh, great. Great. So just after work for you? All right. Well, thank you, everyone. We won't do these introductions every time, so no worries. If you do decide to attend another session where we're covering the similar content, we will do the introductions. But I'm thinking that we're getting a lot of people that tend to be in the same time zone. Not everybody. Maybe just by the time that this is scheduled, right? So an 8:30 session seems to work well for a lot of people on the East Coast. So I know this is not representative of our whole population for the MSBA program. It's certainly a global program and super diverse. And I'm just going through, and I don't know if you're as impressed as I am, but just hearing all the roles that your fellow colleagues in this class have, it's really super amazing. And this year is going to be amazing that you're going to be able to learn from each other, which is a really big part of the work in this program, learning from each other, and also the ability to kind of network with each other. So definitely take advantage of that. And as you hear, kind of take note of folks that are of interest to you, so then you can kind of reach out when you get to New York, or if you're already here, when you get to the first day of the program, which is like May 15th or something. Don't quote me on that date. Okay, so next up, I'm going to shut off my camera because you probably don't need to see me anymore, but feel free to use yours as you're asking questions. And I'm going to go back to my slide deck, and we have a little under an hour. And what I'd like to do here is provide you with a little bit of an overview of the course. And I have an agenda for today, which is really focused on being a practice session. So I'm going to ask you to do some coding in R, but we'll do it at a reasonable pace. And the idea is just to, have you do it more, just like speaking a language, right? Okay, so I have this pre-module roadmap up here, and this is just to kind of clarify, right? This is a unique course, a unique program in which you're doing some work on your own before, like 6 weeks before you arrive to NYU Stern for module 1, the in-class session. And I tried to put this together to kind of clarify things for you, but to kind of show how, even though you have 6 weeks to kind of do everything, that following a schedule is going to be helpful for you, right? So my class, or the R portion of the course, is again really intended to be supportive, and the work is primarily hands-on, right? So the idea is for you to complete 6 exercises, turn them in, to show a level of confidence before coming into the classroom. And to do that, it's best to go through the first 2 lectures. You can call them whatever you want, lectures or chapters of that R Fundamentals book that I put together for you guys, and attend a web meeting like you are now. And we're going to review exercises that are part of those chapters, exercises 1.1 and 2.1. We'll do some of that today. And then I'm going to ask that you complete the exercises that match those lectures. So 1.2 and 2.2. You have, until the end of the pre-module period to turn in the exercises. But if you just do it like on a rolling basis, the work won't seem as much, and you'll get feedback right away. So that's why this schedule is designed how it is. After April 9th, you should be really thinking about working on the statistics portion of this course, which is run by my colleague, a renowned statistician, Peter Lochner, and he'll be kind of taking it from there. Will I be available? Will this part of the course still be open? Can you still take time to complete it? Of course, you have until the end of the pre-module period. But this roadmap is meant to kind of ensure a level of competence, sooner than later. Each of these lectures, I kind of estimate about 2 hours to complete, and including the homework, if you want to take some more time doing some of the practice exercises, that's going to be a little bit more time. But I like to keep it, like, kind of give you that time frame, so you're like, oh, I have 2 hours, or I have an hour, I can complete like a half a lecture or half a lesson. And it's not supposed to be overwhelming, and the idea is just kind of like follow along with it, and then pause where you have questions, and find ways to ask them. So you can ask them through NYU classes, through the forums. You can send us an email. Raymond Junkins is our teaching fellow for the course, and he was a former student of mine. He's fantastic. Has a deep knowledge of programming and coding, so we're psyched to have him as part of the teaching team. He is not going to support the statistics part of the course, so he's just a TF for you guys on learning R. Risa asked me about format for the exercises. when I ask you to write an R script, so I'm going to want a .r file. If I ask you to just answer questions like in lessons in 1.2 and 2.2, those you can submit as a Word doc, that's fine, or you can cut and paste it into the text field of the assignments submission box. Either way is fine. We kind of prefer Word files for that kind of stuff because then we can mark them up and give you some feedback. It's harder to do that when you just submit it as a text box, but no big deal if you did already, it's fine. Yep, so Word doc is fine completely. So let me know if you have questions about this, but I hope that it's relatively straightforward. I've done this format ever since 2014, and it's worked really nicely for the students to kind of guide the experience. So let me just go back to PowerPoint here. Okay. So today, what I'd like you to do is make sure that you have RStudio open, and I'm going to provide a quick mini lecture on some basics, some foundational concepts in R, really short mini lecture. And during the mini lecture, I might ask you to do a tiny bit of coding. And then I'm going to ask that you have exercises 1 and 2 available. You'll see on my PowerPoint screen on the slide that there's a materials tab here, and these are actually the links to exercises 1 and 2. So that should be straightforward. You kind of know where they already exist already, but just in case you wanted that reference, you can find those exercises here as well. All right, and all the time I'm monitoring the text chat, so if you do have questions, you can ask them. And if I don't get to it, it might mean that I'm getting so many questions that you just have to repeat yourself, and that's totally fine. I would suggest in these sessions, since you have 2 more to attend for the R portion of this course, that you have RStudio open, maybe on the left-hand side, and then you have the exercise open on the right-hand side. And so then you can you can see what the questions are, and then you can code it. That would be a great idea. Another thing you could do is make a printout of the exercises. It gets a little bit more complicated when you're adding your GoToMeeting or GoToTraining panel with the text chat, but just try to keep that open if you can as well, or you could even minimize it. The idea is that I'm going to want you to cut and paste some output in the text chat, just to kind of show others how you've solved maybe some of the problems that I've given you. And we'll get the hang of this. So the point of the session also is just to get used to kind of learning and studying in this type of environment, this online space as well. So we will just learn by doing together. Okay, let's start with the basics of R here. So this is your RStudio workspace. So I hope this looks familiar to you. So in many of the videos, I've kind of walked you through kind of what these different quadrants are, but I want to do it again. So I'm going to use my mouse and just kind of mouse over what I'm looking at. So here, this area is usually where you're going to be writing your R scripts. Okay, so if you haven't started working in R at all, you could actually create your R programs as a text file here with an extension of .r. We're going to create other file types that you will learn about called markdown files, notebooks as well. So this is a space where we can write those, okay, and we don't have to actually execute them. So I could write anything in plain English, or I could write it in R code. It doesn't matter until I execute it, and then that stuff I wrote in plain English probably won't do much. Okay, so this quadrant is like basically where you code, and if you're not seeing it, there's always these like maximize and minimize buttons, and so that's the way that you can see it there. You can also go ahead and configure your workspace to make sure that you see all the quadrants. The next one down below is this is your console window, and we'll get to that as well. But that's where we're going to be just typing in all of our R code for now. Then, as we progress to more advanced exercises, you'll see in chapter 3, we'll actually be writing what's called our own R script. So we'll be using this upper left-hand quadrant a lot more. But for now, we're going to be using this console window. And this cursor here, means that it's like, R is ready and waiting for you to start typing, and it's going to respond after you press the enter key. And so today we'll be using R as a simple calculator and typing commands at what's called the command prompt. Okay, so that's this little greater than sign. So we'll get there. And then you'll see over here on the right-hand side, this is called our environment, and we have a history tab as well. Here we can see all of the data that we've imported. So here are what are called some data frames. One is called movies or sidewalk, and it will tell us how many observations and how many variables are part of that data set. Lots of other variables that I've created, and I won't go any further in describing that. And then we can also use this button here to import any data we have. So I'll ask you for exercise 2.1 to import something called Winter Olympics. It's Winter Olympic medal and ranking data. And you can go ahead and click here to import that data. On the right-hand side, lower right-hand quadrant, this is where, of course, we're going to see all of our beautiful data visualizations. This one I would call fair at the best, the one that we're looking at. But it's one that kind of like a display, a nice, simple scatter plot that shows a perfect linear relationship is displayed here just as an example to show you. But it's also where we can navigate to some of our files to enable some packages that help us work and operate on data when we want to do special things, and a lot more. But the space, again, that we really want to work with today is going to be that console lower left-hand quadrant. So basically, anytime we see in this command prompt, we can start with just some basic input and output. So again, using R as a basic calculator, where our input would be 3 plus 2, and our output would be 5. You can, if you're live with your RStudio, you can kind of follow along and just type in these simple calculations. Dividing 100 by 5, that's our input. And as soon as we press enter, that's our output. Does anybody know what that 1 is in brackets? That seems to be, kind of like annoying after our output. So anybody, you could just type it in the text chat if you have an idea. It's a line number. It's a line number of the output. Good. And so if we had output that was many, many lines, we would see many, many numbers there, 1 on each line. So again, we're on this, we're looking at our input here, 12 plus 12 plus 12, and here our output is 36 when we press enter. So there are, just in like any programming language, just like with a calculator, we have lots of arithmetic operators. And some of them may look very, very familiar, and some are a little bit different. So these are some of the simple ones. Obviously, we use plus we use it for addition. It's also another operator that we use in programming for what's called concatenation, which we will talk about at some point later. But right now, we use it to add integers or numeric data together. Subtraction, obviously, when we're working with numeric data, we can use subtraction. Division, multiplication is just the asterisk. Okay, so we don't use an X, we use an asterisk. If we want to raise something to a power, the exponent follows the caret, and the caret is the little symbol above the 6. And if we're doing anything fancy, like looking at the remainder of like division, of integer division, we use something called the modulus, which is the double percent sign. So these are just some simple operators, just to get your mind thinking around how we actually can manipulate our data mathematically. So the next concept I want to introduce you to is actually storing our data in variables, right? Because we don't want to just work with the data itself and not be able to reference that data or update it. So we use variables to reference our data. And what I like to do as part of this class is not just kind of show you the technical how-to, but use the language of programming in addition to the syntax. And so when we use the language of programming, I say something like this. This is our name of our variable. Okay, this is our assignment operator, it's called. So I just introduced you to mathematical operators. So we know that mathematical operators are, plus, minus, things like that. This is called an assignment operator. And in some programming languages, can anybody tell me in the text chat what the assignment operator is? Like in Java, I know somebody's a Java coder here. What would the assignment operator be in Java? Or even JavaScript? Yeah, it's an equal sign. Well, right. So this is one thing that's unique about R. You can use the equal sign in R as an assignment operator. However, if you want to be a hardcore R programmer and be part of the community, we use the R assignment operator, which looks like a less than sign and a minus sign together. For those of you that already have some experience in coding, this will probably be the thing that will just take you a second every time you see it until it's kind of like embedded, okay, or internalized. So here what we're doing is we're assigning the value, okay, this number 3, the value to the variable x. So x and 3 are essentially the same thing, but I can always update x. So at some point I can make x 4 and modify that variable. So how we would describe what's going on here is we'd say the value of 3 is assigned to the variable x. And just by this type of what's called assignment of a variable, of data to a variable. Okay, I'm just going to, Chris, I think I have to mute you, sorry. Just by doing that, this variable has a particular type. Can anybody guess what this data type is? Is like x a character? Is it a string? So it's a numeric, and that's the term that's used in R. And so what's great about numeric operators is then we can use our mathematic operators to manipulate them. So we always need to make sure that we know what type our data is, because then we can know what operators to use on it, right? So I'm not going to like add, let's say 2 Boolean values together, or I could add 2 strings together, but it wouldn't give me a result of addition that I would expect. So if I wanted to add x plus 2, what would my value be? How would I do that? Somebody can type it in the text chat. If I wanted to add, okay, so everybody kind of sees what happens. So somebody's adding x plus 2, Gianna, she's actually adding 2 to x, and then she's storing it back in x in Gianna's example. So just to kind of see that. So now with Gianna's example, what's the value of x? If you're looking in the text chat, the value of x is 5, okay? So this is just an example of how you can use variables and update them. And also knowing that they're of a certain data type, then you can use mathematical operators to manipulate them. Great. So I mentioned there's another way to assign values to a variable, and that's through the equal sign. Can you do this? Of course. Does this mean x equals 3? It does not. It really means the value of 3 is assigned to the variable x. If we wanted to talk about equality, we use a different variable, a different operator, and it's called a Boolean operator. Does anybody know what that Boolean operator is that has to do with equality, not Reza? Thank you. Robert. Yes, it's the double equal sign. Okay, so this is much different than the single equal sign. And we'll get to that, but just so you know that this and this are both assignment operators and mean exactly the same thing. In my documentation and the work that the chapters that I've written for you in the tutorials, I try to use this assignment operator. Okay, you'll find this also in all the R documentation. If you go to Stack Overflow and you have questions, everything will be written in this format for assignment. Okay. So moving on, I'd love you just to go ahead and if you have RStudio open, just try it. So assign a value of 42 to a variable named y. And if you've done it, you can just paste not everybody has to do it, but just paste your response in the text chat just so we can kind of see. Great. So you should have something that looks like this, just practicing using that assignment operator. And then if you wanted to access y, you just type that at your command prompt, okay? And that would print out the value, okay? So that's how we know what that value is stored in that variable or referenced. Great. If you wanted to do further arithmetic examples, just in similar one that we just did before, we can add 2 to y because we know y is numeric. And then when we do that, we just get an output. But the value of y hasn't changed yet, right? Because we're just adding 2 to it, but we're not storing it back in the variable y. If we wanted to, raise y to the second power, again, we can use that caret operator for our exponents, and then we get the output of that. Again, using R as a calculator, very, very, very simple, straightforward. If we wanted to update our variable, I mentioned before we weren't updating it. Here I've assigned the value of 42 to y. And now what I can do is I can subtract 1 from 42 and then store it back in y. So you read it on the right side first, and then you go left. Okay, so y minus 1. So now we know y is 42. 42 minus 1, 41. Store it back in the variable y. And if I want to print it out, I could just type the letter y, or I could use the print function. When you're in Panos's class, I don't know how many people have started his work with your Python class. Anybody? Well, you should. He has some pretty cool videos. My center helped him out make them. I hope you like his videos. They're very cool. So he uses the print command a lot in his Python notebook. So you can also use print to show output. In R, you really don't have to. You can just type the variable name. There might be an instance in which formatting dictates that you use a function called print. So that's why I like to introduce it. Okay, so why don't you go ahead and do this in RStudio. Assign a value of 42 to the variable y, and then assign that value to x. And when you've done that, type your answer in the text chat. Great, great. So you might get something that looks like this. Good, I see people trying to apply some things we just talked about. And usually you'd probably just do this in 2 lines of code. So your first line would be the assignment of 42 to y, and then your next one would be the assignment of y to x. Great. So I mentioned a little bit about data types and other data structures, but this is really important stuff here. In order to use specific tools, and we're gonna start changing that word tools to functions. And if you're, programming another language, they might be called methods. But these are kind of what I call the verbs of programming, right? So you have your methods. So your methods act on data, or act on information, or act on objects, right? That can manipulate those objects, transform them, interrogate them, ask questions of your data, your objects, and so on. And so we use functions to do that. And functions can only act on specific types of data. There's lots of functions, thousands of functions that we can use in R. And in order to use them appropriately, we need to understand a little bit of what kind of data they're expecting. So let's just take a really, really simple example. Let's say I use a function called round. Anybody can share what they think that function might do? round. I'm just going to type in what the function looks like. Good. It's round with 2 parens. Thank you for those who participated. So if I want to round, I'm usually going to round a number. And this function, the round function, actually rounds a number. And so if I have a number, let's say my number is this one, 3.14159, and I want to round that to 2 decimal places, let's say. I'm going to type this in the text chat. Okay, so I'm going to create a variable. And I'm going to get to showing you stuff in R too, but I just want to keep this really simple for now. So I'm going to assign a value of 3.14159. It should be a familiar number. So first I assign that to x, and then I take a round function, and I'm going to what we call pass in x, comma 2. Now I'm not expecting you to know what this is yet, but what this does is this is a function that will round whatever the first parameter is, which in this case it's x, and which references the value 3.14159, and then I'm going to round that to 2 decimal places. So what's going to be the output? Great. So Reza has it. 3.14. Okay, rounding it to 2 decimal places. That's what that function does. That function can only act on what we're calling numeric data. I'm going to write that in the text check. Numeric data. Okay, so I have something here called a numeric class. This means it could be integers, it can be floats, it could be integer vectors. That means an array of numbers, essentially, or a column. If you're thinking of the Excel, that's what a vector is. A vector is simply a column of data. Okay. When I say an integer, that's just one value. That's one cell. Okay. If you have that Excel spreadsheet view, just kind of thinking of it. So an integer would just be 42. An integer vector would be that whole column in Excel. Okay. So for us to use certain functions, we need to know what the value of the data is that we're using or operating using those functions for. So, but there's much more to life and programming coding than just numerics. So what else is there? There's something called Boolean. These are values that are what are called logical, and a value can have a variable can be either true or false, for instance. And we'll talk about in a lot of coding, we test for truth and using something that's called logical operators. And this is where we want R to return something that might be either true or false when we're evaluating a statement. Does X equal Y would be kind of a question that we would have. And if we ask that question, we'd ask it in this way that I just typed in the text chat. And that's, if I translate that into English, it's saying, does X equal Y? Okay. And the output of that would be either true or false. And the reason why I know what that output would be is because I'm using a logical operator, that double equal sign. Okay, I could do something is X greater than, less than Y. That would be asking a different question. That would also return a true or false. And there's many cases in which we'd want to do that. We also have characters, and those are what we call strings. This is where we have text data, something like hello world or your name or the day of the week. We can have a character vector. Character vector, again, is the same idea that I talked about with just a integer vector. A character vector simply just tells us, excuse me, go back one slide, previous. A character vector just simply is a column of data, okay, that is all the same type. So the days of the week, for instance. Any questions at this point? All right, so we have some fundamentals here. Next, I want to just do a code walkthrough. These are my favorite things to do. We just look at a little bit of code and we talk about what's going on. So here's a snippet here. And the first thing that I'm doing is I have a variable x. And that variable, whatever value you give it. If you're following along, you can assign x to a value of like 4. So I use a function called class, and that tells me the data type of it. So that gives me information that I might need to know. Now the next thing I'm doing is I'm assigning, and I'm using the equal sign just to give variety, a float variable or float data or decimal data 1.2 to z, and you also see that returns numeric. Okay, so it doesn't matter if it's an integer or a floating point decimal or a double, it's still a class numeric in R, unless we explicitly make it a different class. We coerce it, and we will talk about coercion a little bit, not today. If I wanted to assign a word, let's say, to a variable, I can do that as well. All words need to have double quotes around them, please. Okay, and that's how you signify to R that you're going to be assigning a data that's of type what we call character. Okay, and that we use that for all text type of data. So I have book, and I've assigned that to a variable b. If I type b out, I get it returns book, literally the value that's referenced in that variable. And if I want to find out the class or the data type, I use the class function. I pass in b, and it returns a character. So this should be rewarding in the sense is that you know what the output's going to be, and it's just so you can also do that. So Yogesh, I mentioned that I was just using the equal sign for variety. Okay, but using this assignment operator is what I'm going to suggest and recommend as especially those who are learning R for the first time. Perfect. Okay, so just a few more review things. Vectors. Now, I described to you a vector is just simply like a column of data in Excel. Just think about it that way. What we're looking at here is we can actually create vectors. We don't have to import data and then like reference a column and then say, oh, that's a vector. We can actually create a vector of data just in the same way, but just a few things that are tweaked that we did for creating variables. So here we go. Let's read it from right and then go to the left. So C means it's like a combined function. It's saying this is a function. C is a function, and we're passing in values. How many values are we passing in? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 values. Okay, so our vector has a length of 6. That means there's 6 values, and that vector is called what? Who can tell me what it's called? Okay, the vector is called x. Okay, so now x is a vector of 6 values. It's still of type numeric. If I add 2 to x, you see the output. It adds 2 to every position or every element in my vector. Okay, so it's saying 2 plus 1, my output is 3. 2 plus 2, 4. 2 plus 3, 5, and so on. So hopefully that's clear. But you can see how the power of computation just simply like this. Okay, so now I want you to, on your own, create a vector called months with the integers 1 through 12 and square that vector. So here's a little problem for you to solve. And when you get that answer, just type it in the text chat. And more than the answer, I would say it would be good to see your code. Great. This is really just giving you a chance to kind of apply some of the quick things that we talked about to an example. Good. So you can take a look at that text chat, but I'm also going to show you how you can do it. So there's two alternatives. And there's more ways than just two. And that's what's really interesting about coding, right? It's definitely a science, but there's certainly an art to it, because there's many different ways that you can solve problems, not just one particular way. It's actually quite hard to even grade some coding homeworks. And the reason why is because there's so many different ways that you can kind of approach problem solving. So first, I can use the combine function and pass in values 1 through 12 separated by a comma. Okay, I could assign that to a variable called months. We know that variable is going to be of type, probably going to be of type numeric, right? Because I'm passing in numeric data. Or I can use this colon here. I can say 1 through 12 inclusive. And that's the same thing as the statement above. Okay, and I can assign that to months instead. So there's two different ways. So if you've done it the first way, try the second way. If you've done it the second way, try the first way. And then I can go ahead and square that. And so this colon here is great for just representing a range. Okay, it's a shortcut. It saves you some typing. So when we're coding, we're typing a ton, and it's always nice to kind of know a few shortcuts here and there. In most things that I do in my teaching, and for this class, I like to be super explicit because I don't want you to try to have to, do code too much. I want to make sure that all the concepts are clear, and then you can make it more eloquent and pretty and add that art to your coding. Okay, there. Okay, so why don't we do 2 more short exercises and then we'll move on. So here I want you to create a vector called days with the days Monday through Wednesday in it. Oh, David, you have a good question. What is alt? That was a comment. I'm going to go back and answer David's question real quick. So here, if I'm typing this in at command prompt and I write #alt, I'm just saying that's an alternative solution. But R doesn't compile this; it ignores this. It's like writing a little note to myself in English. So let's go back to the exercise. Create a vector called days with the days Monday through Wednesday. Once you've done it, simply share your code with us in the text chat. So we have some fast typers here. Okay, somebody forgot the double quotes. So we want to make sure we have the double quotes around the days of the week each day, because we're using character data. This is good. This is great. Some people chose to go uppercase, lowercase, camel case, sentence case. Good, good, good. So you might have something like this, okay? The key is that anytime you're using text data that you want to make sure you have that in double quotes, and then separate each element in their vector. So remember, this would be like 1 cell, 2 cells, 3 cells, by commas. Good. And then if you wanted to use the class function, and you pass in days, it should return character at this point. All right. So we talked a little bit about functions. We've tried some functions, and this is more of a formal definition of functions, that they operate on some specified arguments. You've been using them all along: the C function, right? The round function, the class function, and there's other functions that are built in. So just to kind of demonstrate, there's the square root function. So that's a function in base R. We pass in a value or a variable, and then it will return the square root of that. We have one called mean, which is, excuse me, mean, which is obviously takes the mean of some data, and these data can be a vector, a single, it could be a vector or a couple of values. So here I'm using a function within a function, right? So what am I doing first? I'm creating my vector of how many elements, of 5 elements, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Those are the actual values there. And then I'm taking the mean of that. And you'll see the mean will be 3. Okay, so it's a function within a function. So we read kind of inner parens to outer parens. If I wanted to use a function to operate on text data, like turning everything uppercase, I noticed that, Carlos, everything you have is in lowercase. Why don't you go use the to upper, and then you can change your data, as an example. Or Emmanuel, yours is in sentence case. You can use the to upper function. Pass in, you could pass in the value itself, or you can simply pass in the vector that you created. Rashad, that colon's only going to work for numbers. We're not going to be using a vector as a list. Right, Tom. Okay, good. But we haven't talked about list, which is also another type of data structure. So let's, we still have some time, and I want to make sure that we get to practice exercise 1. And this is doing a little bit of what we've done before, but using R as a simple calculator. And these are the objectives. And so to do this, what I'd like you to do is make sure that you go to our fundamentals and that you get exercise 1.1. I've showed you kind of where that was before. And then we're going to get to work. So why don't you make sure you have RStudio open. I'm going to transfer my screen, but I'm going to ask that you begin right now working on questions 1 and 2. So one is a computation, following the order of operations, and the other one is taking an absolute value of a number. So we'll do questions 1 and 2 right now. When you have those answers, type them in the text chat. In the meanwhile, I'm going to bring up my RStudio screen. Okay, so I have my screen up. Great. Yours might look similar to mine or a little dissimilar. I have some stuff going on in my console window here. I press Control L and I can clear that. And at the command prompt, you can simply type in the following calculation, and you should get 130.5769. You could take that whole thing and pass it into the round function if you wanted to, and do that 2 decimal places, and then you could round that as well, just to show you some kind of live demos here. Seeing that people got the absolute value of -88, so that's using the absolute value function. Okay, let's say that you're like, what does ABS mean? Let's pretend you didn't know. You could type in question mark ABS, and it will actually tell you what if you're looking at my screen right now, in the help viewer, it brings up the help screen. So it will tell me what kind of method this is, and that ABS computes the absolute value of X, X being the data. So anytime you're unclear of what a function is, you can always type, the name of the function and like round, and you can see the usage, and it'll also give you some other details about it. All right, so let's move on. Go ahead and work on the next couple problems. So we're going to take the base 2 log of 72, which is question 3. Questions, and then compute question 4, which is taking the exponent, and then we'll do some age computations, question 5 and 6. So get as far as you can. So if I wanted to take the base 10 log of 72, I can use the log 10 function. Again, not sure what the log 10 function is or does, check it out in the help. Good. I appreciate all this participation here. It's looking good in the text chat. And I understand not everybody's going to be a participant and you're working at your own pace, but just so you can see kind of how others are sharing there. Okay. Going on to question number 4. And I even show how we can write our own, understanding what, for those of you who have studied a little bit of mathematics and irrational numbers. We have Euler's number here. And then just if you're going on, question 5 has you kind of think through a simple age computation. And you could feel free to put in whatever values you feel for your born and your current. But we want to know if, if a person is old enough to vote, let's say in the United States. So we might do something that looks like this. So we assign a value of 1984 to a variable called year born. We assign a value of 2014 to year current. Okay, so now we have 2 variables. You'll look at my global environment and I have these variables here, year born and year current. Okay, and then I'm evaluating, so I'm subtracting year current from year born. I see that that's 30, and then I'm asking a question using a Boolean operator. I'm saying, is age greater than or equal to 18? And it returns true. Okay. And there's certainly some other problems for you to complete on your own, just for practice, in exercise 1, and also in exercise 2. I put together another whole set of exercises for you to work on and complete. They're just practice. And if you want to kind of see what those solutions are, one thing that I've done, which I will bring up right now, and you might have seen, I'll just bring it up in my screen sharing. So if we're looking at the website that I put together for you, the R Fundamentals, we're working on exercise 1.1. You'll notice that there was actually a code walkthrough here, a video, that I walk through it very quickly. I mean, I think this video might be like just a couple minutes long. So if you just wanted to see me walk through this very quickly, you could. And then you can solve it on your own and then go through the code walkthrough. So then you get some time to practice on your own with it. If you wanted to do exercise 2.1 just for practice, here's exercise 2.1, and then you'll notice that below there's a code walkthrough of the whole exercise. So this format follows through chapters 1 through 6. So you always get a code walkthrough of any of the practice exercises. I make a point of not giving you the code because I want you to code it yourself. These are otherwise you might just look at the code and then not code it. So this allows you, the code is actually in the video, but I want you to go ahead and practice it and do it. So at this point, I'm going to open it up for any kind of questions and let you know that this officially ends our practice session. I hope you found it useful. Feel free to stick around if you have questions. If you want to email me, that's cool too. And I look forward to seeing you at the second online meeting that will cover exercises, some concepts discussed in chapter 3 and chapter 4, which is writing our own R packages and scripts, and then also computing some descriptive statistics. So thank you. At this point, I'm going to stop the recording, which will be posted. I'll send you an email where it will be posted to, and open it up for questions. Thank you. Thanks, Emmanuel. I appreciate that.
Hi, this is Robert here.
Oh, sure.
Nope. Yep. So I think I mentioned a private message, but is there a specific way to import the CSV in terms of how to type it into R if you've downloaded that file? I just want to make sure that I'm doing that correctly.
Yeah. There certainly is a special way. So what can I show you? So you can do it 2 ways. You can use a function called read_CSV, or you can use a button called import data. And I can show that to you. I can just share my screen just to show that to you, if that would be helpful. And I'm sorry, I don't know who that was talking, just because I didn't have
Robert here.
Robert. All right, thanks, Robert. Okay, so Robert, I'm on my screen right now. You can see it. So there's a few things that you can do to import your data. So one would be, do you see where my mouse is right now? There's
Yes.
something that's called import data set. If you click here and you say from text read R, that would be my preference for you to do it this way. You open it up, you browse to, let's say, winterolympic.csv. Okay, and then you open that up and you get a preview of the data. And you notice it even tells you what the data type is. If you don't like the data type it gives you, you can even change it, but it's going to be good. And then you can change the name of what we call the tibble or the data frame. You can call it like data if you wanted to, or you can call it winter. Everything else as a default on how these files are designed is going to be, we're going to keep it the same. So we want first rows as names. That's importing our column names. Okay, we want to keep that first row. It gives us those, so we have names for our variables or our vectors. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, here, do you see how I have a code preview? This is actually the code you type in. So I'm giving you a WYSIWYG, it's called, like, like what you see is what you get kind of way of importing your data, but you could actually just type in this as well using a library called readr. If you haven't gone to session or chapter 3, this stuff will still be new to you. All right, let me know. I'll be here for a little bit. Was there another question?
Hey, Kristen, I have a little higher level question, actually. You mentioned Python as another language to learn. What do you see the value in learning both Python and R, or do you see one as having more advantages than the other?
Okay. Definitely advantages to both. There are certainly a lot of employers that their whole shop is set up as an R shop or a Python or kind of both, or maybe neither. Right, so that's it just diversifies your skill set and being able to do data mining, data analysis, data modeling in multiple languages could prove useful. R is a language made for working with data. So everything that we kind of talked about today is becomes a little bit more difficult even in languages like Python or Java that are much more, for lack of better terms, they're designed in a way of being so extensible that you can create your own apps. You can, use it to do many other utilities, in which R probably has a package for it or something, but R is really made for working with data. Originally, like as a major statistics package competing with SAS and SPSS, but is much more robust, especially in the world of data science. So that's going to be a little bit of my long-winded answer. If you watch the quick demo that I just did, I think for Robert, so like the fact that you're able to just simply say import data set in this tool, it's so centered on having a data frame or some type of data structure that you're working to manipulate. Where in Python, you could just be starting by kind of creating, creating like an interface or scraping, information off a website or doing some other functions that, maybe don't have to do so much with data.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay. Other questions?
Hi, this is Cindy. I've got one quick question. This is actually more about logistics for the course. For each of the sessions, they're at different times. Now, with my job, I have some traveling to do.
Mm-hmm.
So, can I catch one of these sessions on the recorded session and have that still count as attendance, or will I have to make one of the live sessions?
So on the logistics side of things, so you get that there's 3 time slots for every required meeting, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And there are at different times. I tried to keep them so they're relatively around the same, times. But if you can't,
I'm literally going to be on Amtrak for like two out of
totally. Yeah, you can certainly watch one of the recorded sessions. Just sign up for one. So, and you can make a note or just remind me that you're not going to be there.
Well, I mean, I could try, but I'm not sure that I'll have it the whole time.
Yeah, that's fine. But I'll give you the recording for the session in which you signed up for. So you're still kind of part of a smaller subset. It's just, I think, more helpful that way. And then you'll get the information at the time that you need it, so then you can progress.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, sure. No problem. Okay, any other questions?
Hi, Robert here. Another question. So as we were going through the examples for 1.1, some of them had different numbers of decimal places for just the granularity of the data. Even though it's reading out 5 or 6, is it holding all of the data beyond that? Or is it truncating at a consistent number of decimal places?
I would guess that it's truncating it at a specific number of decimal places, just kind of like your calculator would.
Okay.
Hi, Kristen. This is Shivika.
Hi, Shivika.
Hi, Shivika. So my question is, in the R Studio, I can type on top left box as well as in the console. So is there a preferred place we should be typing? I know you told us that we should work in the console, but I was kind of typing in the top left box all the while, and I saw that it was working, but I don't know what's the difference. Could you please tell?
Okay, so this is when you get to chapter or lesson 3, we'll start talking about R scripts, and that's where you're going to want to start typing on the top. Here is just like if you're working in the console, like the input-output idea here. So I just typed 4 + 4. That you're working directly at the command prompt. You can certainly up here, you'll notice that I have code that's written here where I'm like, I'm importing data. Maybe I'm doing some other functions here. All of this is kind of similar in the format that you're talking about. You're just a little bit ahead of the game. That's all.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so I'll stay on for another minute or two. If you have other questions, happy to answer.
I guess I'll offer more question if anyone else has one. This is Aaron. I noticed in the second exercise that in the code walkthrough at the end of the session, you introduced something called a Tibble function, and I had not seen that earlier in the walkthrough. Maybe I missed it, but I was wondering if that's something that you covered.
Sure. So which video was this? I'm sorry, you cut out when you described the first part.
Oh yeah, it was video 2.1 code walkthrough. And it was maybe in the final 30 seconds where you talked about something called a Tibble, and I hadn't heard that before going through the exercise.
Right. Okay, good. So we talked a little bit about variables. We've talked about some data structures. One that we talked about was a vector. Another one, I'm just writing this in the text chat, is called a data.frame, or we also just kind of call it a data frame. A data frame is like, just think of like an Excel or your CSV file. That's going to be a data frame. When we use a function to read in our data called read.csv, it returns a data type of type data frame. Okay, simple stuff. Now, if we use a function called read, believe it or not, underscore CSV, it returns a data frame of type Tibble. It's a little confusing. And the reason why it's confusing is Tibble is a data structure that is based on the principles of what's called tidy data, okay, where we have every observation as rows and every column as variables. And we have the same data type per column. And we have a lot more control in terms of how R classifies our codes, our data. And one of the problems with the existing read.csv function is it brings in any kind of text data as something as called a factor variable, which is very annoying. And as you get through some of the lessons, you'll see some of the annoying things about a factor variable. It's basically a categorical variable that can assign two values to a value. So if I have something like strongly agree, that can have a value of, let's say, 5, and it also can have a value of literally strongly agree. That's where factor variables make sense. Sometimes we might have a list of states, and those states are assigned a value and a name. Doesn't really make much sense, not very, very useful. The idea of a factor variable, categorical variable, means that we can do math on it. We're not going to do math on unique states. So it allows for tidier data, and it's the more contemporary way of working with data in R. That's like kind of the long-winded answer of it. So a Tibble is simply like a data frame or a data structure. How's that?
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah, that definitely helps. I think I'll need to read a lot more, but it's a good start. Thank you.
Yeah, if you like a great resource, if you want to like nerd out about it, Hadley Wickham, he has a book called R for Data Science. I'm just writing this down. I think it's R for DS something. You can check out his website. It's free. It's a resource that I have as part of the course. But if you Google his name plus tidy data, it goes into a lot of the advantages of this new type of data structure. So I might have loosely mentioned it in that second video. So thanks for bringing that to my attention. I hope this gives you a little bit of an explanation. It's just a data structure. For purposes of what you saw in the second video, it's just a data structure.
Cool. Thanks.
Okay.
Have a good night. I appreciate the time.
No problem. Take care. I saw a private chat from Robert. Are you still on the line?
Yep.
Okay, good. Do I keep? Yes, I can. I do. To both your texts, that's great. Glad to hear it. And feel free, if you do want to stop by for office hours, you can. If you're not on campus a lot, we should probably just make a meeting. My office hours are 2 to 3 on Thursdays. If that's like that's like the drop-in time. But if there's another time you'd like to meet, we can set something up.
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you.
You're welcome. Alrighty, so I see that there's 12 more people online, but I'm gonna kind of shut this down if I don't hear any other questions. Thanks, Lakshmi, and thanks for all your feedback. I appreciate it.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.